Hello, welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome to Scotland, that famous home of wine. Here this week at the Alfred Dunhill Links Championships, you'll have seen a little while back we did a couple of live shows from here, celebrating the wine that forms such an important part of this tournament. It's got a richly South African heritage, and so no surprise that South African wine plays a big role. And it's a tournament which a few years ago I first got to meet somebody who's now my very favourite rock star in the whole world. At the time, I didn't actually know who he was or who his band was, but I've now got all of his albums on cassette, and we've spent many happy hours drinking away. So for the first time in person on Dan Really Likes Wine, hello, Dave Farrell.
It's a different experience being here in person, Dan. We've done way too many over teleconference. So it's nice to actually finally be here with you together, hanging out, and not drinking wine at 9 in the morning California time.
Which is not unusual when you're a rock star. I think Lincoln Park do that most of the time.
It's part of the hazard of the job, I guess.
What I'm loving about this is we're about to drink some wine together, and normally we've got different bottles, different sides of the world, and it's a shared passion we have. I love wine, as anybody who's watched the show will know. You love wine as well. Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I just started getting into it 20 years ago or so, and being in California, we've got a great region in Napa, being fairly close to where I live, and so I get an opportunity to go up there and try to learn as much as I can when I do it, but more importantly, get a chance to taste some wonderful wine, and obviously with traveling, get a chance all over the world to try wines in different areas, Stellenbosch included, and some great South African wines in that mix.
Well, we've got some great South African wines we're going to be drinking, along with some Napa. And this is a bit of a competition today, Napa versus Stellenbosch. And obviously, one will win, and the other one will be Californian. But before we get into comparing those wines, you've been drinking wine now for 20 years. You've been enjoying it. We have many conversations about it. What is it about wine? Because for most of us, we think, all right, well, here's this tattooed bass player from Lincoln Park. He'll be drinking vodka out of the bottle and throwing TV sets out of hotel windows. But you're a little bit more refined than that. The wine is a big love.
We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Maybe it actually is that wine for me is a calmer beverage to have. It's more of a hang out and cuddle on the ground after too much of it, as opposed to throwing TVs out of windows. But I think for me, the way my brain kind of is wired and works, it's probably actually why I like golf as well. But I like things that are complex and that you can never really figure out. And I found that with wine, very early on, my first goal was, all right, I'm just going to learn about Napa. It's close to home. I'm gonna solve that before I start conquering other areas of the world as far as knowledge. And obviously, very quickly learned I'm not going to conquer Napa knowledge. So I just resigned myself to not trying to become a sommelier and to just really enjoy it. But that got me set off, and since then, it seems like an infinite variety of vintages and years and winemakers and everything to kind of delve into.
Tell us a little bit about Napa. I've spent a small amount of time there, just as you've spent a little time in Stellenbosch, so we know each other's parts of the world slightly. Give us a sense of what for you is the charm of Napa Valley.
I mean, the area is absolutely beautiful. It's unique. Even in California, it's a different type of area. It is the Napa Valley. It sits kind of in a nice space between kind of beautiful mountainsides on both sides. It's green, the weather's great. Get on the vineyards, you can smell and feel just that, I don't know, there's a magical different type of quality to that space in that area. The other thing too that's really, I end up doing it a lot, I think a lot of people do, is the Napa area is huge, and it's kind of engulfed all these towns. There's Napa itself, but then the Napa Valley even has started to incorporate areas of Sonoma County. Those are still sometimes called Napa wines, even though they're a county over from where Napa sits. And it in just regular conversation, saying it's a Napa wine, a lot of times, especially for guys like myself who aren't 100% accurate on the geographic locations, but it's a big area of growing and of harvesting and of creating wine. I mean, you could be driving from one vineyard to another, and be driving for an hour and a half and still be getting to a new one in the valley,
It's a valley that is probably best known for two grapes around the world, Chardonnay and Cabernet Sauvignon. They're two of the hallmarks, and that works quite nicely because Stellenbosch makes some rather nice Cabernet Sauvignon and some rather nice Chardonnay. I'm going to try them in just a second. Before we do, though, what are your preferences? So if you've got any bottle you can open, what's it likely to be at home?
I drink a lot of white at home, so I will drink like a lot of Napa Chardonnay. Are you familiar with this particular cake bread?
I'm not. Cake bread sellers. Well, tell you what, let's pour some Chardonnay then.
Okay.
And see how the South African compares. And you can tell me a little about cake bread sellers, which David, if you're watching this and you are at the American government, David smuggled this over in his suitcase, as rock stars are prone to doing. And what we're doing, we're drinking the cake bread from Napa along with Waterford, which is actually a state. You visited Waterford, haven't you?
I have. Yes, visited that. Visited them. What might have been 2017?
Yeah, I think that's when you were over.
Yeah, on a wonderful trip, and that was actually part of the beginnings of my falling in love with Chenin also.
Ah.
So I'm supposed to be Team Napa. I don't. You haven't told me the criteria on how I win this competition, so I don't want to move over too much into the South African wines section. But that trip, I think, both for my wife and I, was the beginning of us discovering and really loving South African Chenin Blanc.
Well, look, there's a lot more of that story and that journey to be done, and Chenin is another episode in itself. Let's have a crack at the Chardonnay and try some of this cake bread. If I think of Californian Chardonnay, if we think about it in a South African perspective, we have a huge number of South Africans who will not drink Chardonnay because for a long time, if you drank a South African Chardonnay, you were basically chewing through a crate. It was just so wooded, so over-extracted. And a lot of that was inspired by a perception of what Chardonnay should be. And a lot of that perception came from that new Californian style, which was big and wooded, and you lost the fruit entirely. Has that changed? What is Chardonnay at the moment like coming out of California, broadly speaking?
I think that's the most common perception, and it is accurate in my experience for it to be buttery, bold, kind of a robust white. But I think Napa is known for that in their Chardonnays, but obviously Napa's got a ton of other things going on with it as well. But if you were, I think, what I would say with cake bread is that it is pretty well indicative of what a normal Napa, great Napa white Chardonnay would be.
Tell me a little bit about cake bread. Where is it? Who's behind it?
Cake bread is actually north of the town of Napa, maybe half an hour, kind of on the historic highway that runs through there. And I think they started in '73, which is pretty old for that area. 1973, Jack Cakebread and his wife started the
Is that his real name?
Jack Cakebread.
Not just one of your rock stars. He's made something up.
I make this. Do your research. I just found that out like half an hour ago. Yeah. So, but '73, I believe for that area. I mean, Napa's not the oldest wine region in the world. Mm-hmm. Nothing in California is by definition older than 50 years, so it seems. But and now I think they produce. I just saw this recently too. I think as many as 200,000 cases or whatever a year.
Okay, that's a big
kind
production.
Of a large production house, yeah.
All right. And is this one that we'd normally find in the cellar in the 7-floor mansion of Lincoln Park's bass player's estate?
I would more have it in my refrigerator. My cellar where I'm in Southern California doesn't stay cool enough. It's still hot.
All right. Well, before we comment on it, we've also got the Waterford Chardonnay. And Stellenbosch, where you've been at it, you've tried this. Stellenbosch is really well known for its big reds in particular, the Cabs, the Bordeaux blends. But Stellenbosch Chardonnay is a story that's gaining a bit of traction in our part of the world. This is sitting at a beautiful temperature. Give it a swig. See what you think of this one out of Kevin Arnold's cellar in Stellenbosch.
It's very good. I was also looking up, before talking to you, I had a whole list of awesome wine word descriptions.
Like nice.
This one's very nice. I'm getting notes of tennis ball. I'm getting plastic pool toy. Barnyard.
The best one is always bay leaf because nobody knows what a bay leaf actually tastes like. You can throw it in completely randomly.
Do you ever go that? I've seen this in tequila tastings where you do the one nostril smell. Okay. It's supposed to smell different from each
How
side.
can you possibly be tasting on tequila? I mean, it all tastes like petrol. Apologies to our Mexican viewers. We hope neither of you are upset. All right then, David, we've had both of the Chardonnays. Let's say you're just simply opening a bottle, nice glass with the lovely Mrs. Farrell. Which one would you pick?
Diplomatically, I'll give you a no answer. If I'm just drinking a bottle of wine or having some wine just to drink some wine, I think I would go with our South African. And potentially served with food, I'm thinking I might go the cake bread.
I think that's a very good answer because I think the cake bread has got the potential to have a lot more brought out of it by the right kind of dish, something with a little spice or
the cake bread with like fish or good chicken, something like that to pair it with. I'm not exactly sure how or what I'd pair it with, but that would be fantastic. But this just by itself and sipping on it, I think would be like we're doing right now. So if I do have to give an answer, the winner right now, I would say is the Waterford.
Right. So there we go. Just to clarify that is Dave Farrell from Lincoln Park blowing the Californian out the water with his confirmation that the South African is far superior. Right, so we are one down on the Chardonnays. On some Cabernet Sauvignon. I know you mostly drink red. There's a fair amount of South African wine that you've been through over the years, especially here at the Dunhill. Is there a red preference? Are you a big red drinker, a light Pinot Noir kind of guy?
On a normal day, I would choose to go with the white. On the occasion where I will be drinking red, it's usually going to be something that is, with a steak or with something heavy, and it's an occasion. So in that mode, I do gravitate towards a cab, like a good full cab.
I suppose where you live in your retirement village in Southern California, where it's basically 40 degrees Celsius every day and the sun shines and everybody drives around in their golf carts, having a big red wine a lot of the time is probably not really going to fit with the kind of weather and climate you have.
Definitely true. I do find myself, probably because of that, drinking cabs or even having like a heavier meal more predominantly in the winter for us, which is even still pretty mild. I do find myself gravitating towards it if it's cooler and you kind of want something to warm you up.
So if it's dropped to 38 degrees Celsius, for instance, and you're
Correct.
in a light sweater.
Yeah, similarly, when it's warm, we'll go tequila for a spirit, and as it gets colder, you'll go more whiskey. That's the analogy for me with what we're doing with the wines.
So I've got a great vision, just before we jump into the reds, of you've finished a big concert, 800,000 people in the audience, you're all going absolutely mental, and you charge back off stage and all baying for more. And always as an audience, we're waiting. Are they coming off? Are they coming off? And I always think that you're just sort of toying around with this. But now I kind of get the sense that actually it's the rest of the band just waiting because your Chardonnay has been decanted and you're just having a glass of it before you run back up on stage.
The truth of Lincoln Park and me in particular is so disappointing to so many people every single time. And you could find video footage of it, of the encore break at shows, and we literally would have our on-tour chef, which already sounds ridiculous. We'd have our on-tour chef
pan frying scallops for you.
Worse. We'd already have eaten like a meal earlier in the day, and at this point he would be serving us literally coconut water, but in the coconut. So he would have sourced real coconuts and drilled holes in them and put straws in them, and that's what we're doing. But I have seen, I almost couldn't believe it. I won't mention names, but Eddie Vedder, and them playing this huge festival in Portugal, just beautiful, beautiful evening, summertime. They go on at maybe midnight and they're going to play till 3 a.m. Just do a monster set, call it 80,000 people, perfect night, perfect temperature. And Eddie's, instead of water, as he's going through his set, has bottles of red wine that's just open. And he's not drinking them in front of the crowd, but he'll go back and just have a sip, but he's drinking it out of the bottle. And for me, I mean, our performances, as were theirs too, they're physical. You move, you're sweating, it's stage lights are hot. You know, it's the last thing in the world I want to be doing at that point is drinking red wine. And the thought went through my head, like, is that really red wine? Like, how do you do that? Like, how does that even work? But
maybe this has been the missing link that stopped you from rising to those sort of Nickelback levels of global stardom.
There's always something I can learn from you.
Let's try some Cabernet Sauvignon.
Hey, I'll give it a shot. I'll see how it goes.
All right, well, I'm pouring this Crossbarn from the Napa Valley. Tell me a bit about it.
So Crossbarn I think it's actually produced, if you look on the label, the vineyard itself is, Paul Hobbs. So Paul Hobbs is...
Someone you've just Googled.
Someone we've just Googled. No, Paul Hobbs is a pretty big winemaker, I think, up in that area. And this is another wine that the Paul Hobbs Winery is out of Sonoma County. So it's almost, if you want to get geographically crazy, which some people do, it's like Napa adjacent, but it all gets lumped into that, that Napa thing, because they're growing grapes all through that Central California wine region. And the thing about this is Napa has obviously become known for their big, bold reds, their big cabs. They're chewy and great with steaks and kind of they sit really well in like a steakhouse environment, and also like, I feel like in a golf world as well. Like, just, you're gonna eat it with that heavier kind of meal. It's gonna be the dudes hanging out, ordering a bottle of cab, and
I'm feeling that one already. We don't have any steak, sadly, but we do have the wine. I'm going to give it a try here. So this is 2017, the one on the right-hand side there, Paul Hobbs Crossbarn. And I'm fascinated to try this because 2017, we're going to try in a moment. South Africa is a wonderful, wonderful vintage.
It smells great. It's another one of my wine words. It's great.
Very nice.
Not to be confused with smells grape.
Oh,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that's one to edit out. It was an interesting one when people start, and I've had it with a few people. We talk about all the fruit that you get. Oh, we get some black cherry, or we get some cassis, or we get some dark red fruit. Never ever has anybody tasted. I kind of get some grapes in this. It just doesn't sit into the...
I'm getting grape notes. I'm definitely tasting red wine. Now this is really, for me, this is great.
It's a very juicy one, and the tannins have softened beautifully for 4 years old now. It's got a little bit of grip, but it's not overwhelming, and it's not abrasive at all. It's settled in so beautifully.
I like that it's got a little bit of that dry feel too.
Yeah. I really like this. It is a lot juicier than I was expecting, but it's not light either. It's still got some weight, some gravitas to it. I mean, this could be, dare I say it, and at risk of flinging industrial volumes of praise upon a wine I've only just encountered, this could almost be an entry-level South African. Now, if you're watching, Paul Hobbs, this is a delight, and I'm very glad that you smuggled this over, along with other things we're not allowed to mention on television. All right, so some Napa Cabernet Sauvignon. Let's see how it compares, how it shapes up to wine, which I've had many times on this particular show, because Ernie himself has been on the show. And for those of you who've watched it, who've seen it, you'll know that Ernie Els is somebody who's got a great love of wine, and particularly a big Bordeaux blend. But the Cabernet Sauvignon, in the case of his signature, forms about 60% of it. And 2017, I'm not sure, I don't know Napa quite so well, but I suspect it would be almost identical, that you've got a bit of an ebb and flow. Some years are amazing, and some years maybe leave a little to be desired. In South African terms, this was just a stellar year. 2017 already being spoken of as one of the great vintages and only getting better. At least I think so. Let's see what California's leading wine expert and rock star thinks of it.
That's very good. Ironically, my entire experience with Ernie Els' wines have always been here
Yeah.
in Scotland. I think I haven't seen as much of his stuff over in the States, but I've probably drank too much of it over here when I've been, in Scotland.
And it's very similar. It's not quite as juicy and buoyant as the crossbarn, but it's lovely and smooth. There's a lovely bit of silk to this. And just while I remember, if we can get a close up there on our special guest, his beard is actually completely silver. What you're seeing there from that orange tint is just red wine since he got here on Monday. So it's working as a kind of bearded face dye.
We use it as a dye. Makes me.
All right, another two. Let's get the Dave Farrell Lincoln Park appraisal. Going South Africa here or California?
I think I'm going California on this.
Right.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, look, you're wrong, but it's no. I do like. I slightly prefer the Ernie Els style, but I do really like that crossbarn as well. So I'd very happily open either of them. In fact, very happily open all 4 of these bottles and just have some fun with all of them. I think food-wise, they're going to be great to just play around with.
This group of 4 bottles for me, there's no losers. There's no bottles that I would not be very happy and excited to have. But when it comes to the cab, I think I like a cab, or I think I've just been trained to expect or enjoy a cab that has more of the, almost the particular explosive kind of fruity, big fruit though, feel of what's going on with the crossbarn.
Well, it's the fact that you've got 2 grapes.
If you were to force me to do some sort of an actual wine test and blind have me say what type of wine I think this is, I would not get cab from it.
Well, I think that speaks to probably just a bit of a difference in style between California and Stellenbosch, which leads rather nicely into our closing and what we've got planned, because we've been speaking about this for a few years now, but 2022 is the year. You come to Stellenbosch for a proper exploration. I come over to Napa, and we do a real analysis of the 2 greatest wine growing areas on earth. Apologies to Bordeaux and Burgundy.
Yeah, the two modern heavyweights set to slug it out with Dan and Dave to find out who really is the wine capital of the new world.
The ruler thereof.
Yeah.
All right, well, look, if we get wine like this, we're going to be having a great deal of fun and drinking some terrific stuff. So I will, with that, thank you for bringing over the American wine and for sharing some Napa expertise. I'm looking forward to getting over and doing it in a bit more detail. I'm looking forward to showing you around Stellenbosch early next year.
Can't wait to come back. Had a couple great trips to South Africa already, and always would look forward to coming again.
All right, so there we go. A very, very special guest on Dan Really Likes Wine this week, the bass player and the heartbeat of Lincoln Park. Also a great lover of wine, not just from his native Napa, but also from Stellenbosch. And look out over the course of next year or so for Dave and myself having a bit more fun with wine from our respective countries. Keep drinking, keep supporting wine, South African and Californian, and we'll see you back again next week. This is Dan Really Likes Wine, brought to you by Pick n Pay. Cheers. To join the Pick n Pay Wine Club, simply SMS your smart shopper number to 36775. It's absolutely free, and you'll get for yourself 3 times the smart shopper points on every bottle of wine bought. You'll also get a 20% discount on 10 different wines each month, a 25% discount on a case of wine, and a Magnum, some terrific competitions and invitations to awesome events.